Welcome to Capitol Report, a weekly discussion with your elected officials on the issues and concerns that affect you.
And thanks for joining us. The legislature has begun some work on some business, some of it being carried over from the last session, like proposed changes to Blue Cross Blue Shield. We'll be talking about that and more with our guest this week here on Capitol Report, Representative Joel Johnson, Republican from Clare, reelected to a second term in November to represent the 97th District. He's been appointed to 5 committees, and also House Speaker Jace Bolger announced that he will be serving on the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee of the Midwestern Legislative Conference of the Council of State Governments. I hope I've got all of those details there. Welcome, Representative Johnson. Good to see you here.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Congratulations on the re-election to the second term and the appointments. Let's get a little bit of background first on the added appointment for Ag and Natural Resources with that Midwest Council. How many lawmakers from other states? Maybe you're still in kind of the getting up and running state, but what type of work will this entail?
Well, the whole idea, in my opinion, is that we're going to work together with lawmakers from other states to find ways that can benefit agriculture in our area. Particularly, one of the things that we want to look at is further processing of agricultural products here in Michigan so that we can have a more value-added product to keep increasing that #2 industry in our state. And also natural resources being part of tourism and looking at some of the ways that we can really improve our opportunities for tourism here in Michigan. And along with me, we have Representative Brunner and Representative Potvin, who will also be representing Michigan.
How many states, for this definition of the Midwest, what grouping of states are we talking about?
I believe there are 11 states in the Midwest, and the meeting this summer will be in Minnesota, so we're looking forward to that.
Good. Since we're on the committees as a focus, you recently were granted a hearing before the Tourism Committee on a bill, House Bill 4094, dealing with the prosecution for lawfully taking game in another state. There were some added details there. Explain a little bit more about that and give us an update of where we stand right now.
This is a preemptive bill, Dave, and what happened was that in California there was a person who brought back a game animal from another state that was taken legally. And because of the fact that it was illegal to hunt that animal in California, he was going to be prosecuted. And so people from our district came to me and said, hey, we don't want to have this sort of problems because people go out of state or out of the country to hunt other game, and they like to be able to bring back mounts to put in their living room and so forth. And so as a preemptive situation, we wanted to get in statute that as long as you have documentation and have taken the animal legally, that you won't face any prosecution here in Michigan. So
legal where you go to do the hunting, but maybe it's one that we don't hunt here. Okay, exactly. And running into potential problems when it's brought back.
Yes.
Okay. Serving then too on agriculture, and that obviously, as we said, being tied into this Midwest Council, and in turn then obviously on the bigger picture to the National Farm Bill. Michigan's junior Senator Debbie Stabenow got it passed in the Senate. It did stall in the House, got reworked when we were going through the fiscal cliff deadlines, and that was knocking on the door. And now, though, she is calling for a rewrite because there were criticisms leveled as to what was done with it at the House level in Washington. Where do we stand in this and the role on state and national agriculture policy? Are we still trying to sort out the details of what we either have or what we may eventually get?
As far as I'm aware, and I'm much more tuned in to the state issues than I am federal, but as far as I'm aware, there is still some sorting out being done on the federal level. There has been a Senate bill turned in, and we're expecting a House bill to be turned in, and hopefully there'll be a work group type process where they can get it put together and everybody agree, because we need to move forward with this.
How much of that filters down? I don't know if every issue is at the same. Are there some aspects of it that interact or interface more directly with what you would be doing at a state level in a state government committee that deals with agriculture? When we look at that as federal policy, obviously it's overarching, but how do the two on maybe particular points sort of interact with each other?
The interaction will be minute, actually. The issues that we deal with are issues that are controlled in the state, where the federal issues, particularly those are to do with farm payments and you know, that sort of thing. So while we'll have some interaction, it's the things that they can handle, we pretty much have no effect on. So.
Anything else then from that ag committee level? We always watch that closely, not only for many of the rural areas that we cover, but from really the statewide perspective and how well agriculture has continued to perform economically in the state when everything else has struggled the way it has in recent years. What is on the immediate horizon, if any, as far as upcoming work in the ag committees?
Well, you know, the big things that we're trying to do is to make sure that we can facilitate not only good production here in Michigan, but also the opportunity for further processing, as we talked about earlier, and to make sure that we're opening up routes for people to do a good job with agriculture here in Michigan. Now, one of the issues that we had to deal with last spring was something that kind of got thrown out on us because of the fact of the freeze, that early spring thaw and warm up where the fruit trees came out and wanted to start producing, and all of a sudden they got froze and we had almost no fruit production here in Michigan. And so we put together a bill that allowed facilitation of loans, no interest loans for these producers to help get them through the year. It's not like having another crop, but it is an issue that can help keep them going. And so, you know, sometimes we just have to be prepared to act quickly in those situations.
Well, as we sit down on a Monday afternoon, basically from M55 south, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, there is another significant storm that we're watching, but at the same time, we're hearing from our friends at the Weather Service that we might be getting another warm-up in March. I mean, are there any preliminary plans watching, as you referred to, what happened last spring? Is anybody anticipating that we could see another cycle like that? And what might that do? What do constituents tell you? You weather something like that one season, but what if we were to have a repeat of that?
Oh, it would be devastating, Dave. You know, I'm sure that that we and the federal government would work to get something done with this. But right now, in talking to the fruit producers' representatives, they're expecting to be in really good shape. The trees didn't take a lot of long-term damage from last year, and as this person put it, they're well rested and ready to go forward with good production this year. And so we're really hoping that, you know, you can have a short-term thaw and warm up. We just can't have it as long as it was last year, because that got everything started. So we're still hopeful. Yes.
Keeping the fingers crossed. You also introduced another House bill. This was 5883, and it became Public Act 471 for those that follow the numbers this past year. It came about for citizens in Omer. And the question, what difference will it make for them in your district, along with fishing enthusiasts perhaps across the state? If not directly, could a focus for something like this be applied to other areas? This seems to be a rather focused bill, but how does it impact them locally, and what might the statewide or at least regional impact be?
Yes. Well, people do fish for suckers other places than Omer, but Omer is the sucker capital of the world. So we're excited about this. The problem was that 8 of the last 12 years, when sucker season came, because of an early spring thaw and the ice going out early, the suckers were not in the river anymore. So this has been a time-honored tradition for generations, where people have come to Omer to dip these suckers and take them home, and they can them, they smoke them, and they're quite tasty. But this is a very big part of the economy for Omer. And when people were either finding once getting there that there were no fish, or else calling ahead and finding that the fish were already gone. A lot of these people were not coming. And so now the situation before was that it was in statute as to when that date had to be. So we were able to work with the Department of Natural Resources and the director, Keith Cray, who's been very cooperative. And we were able to set it up so that the DNR has some flexibility in setting that date. So this year it is set for March 20th, which is 10 days earlier than normal. And so this will give people an opportunity, we're sure, to be able to take suckers. And I'm looking forward to going up there and taking part in that myself.
Specific then events, specific fish, specific area, but the idea, at least in principle, is that something that others maybe would take a look at for some very specific or localized events? I mean, to create what I'm gathering from what you're saying, obviously, is a little bit more flexibility, so that as we see changes, ebbs and flows from Mother Nature, we can adapt to these things, rather than seeing not only the natural resource impact, but clearly for a small area such as Omer, you know, a big financial hit as well.
Right, and that's the thing that I was very heartened to see, was that our Department of Natural Resources, when we brought this to their attention, they said, oh yeah, we'd love to work with you on that. So we didn't get a situation where they said, well, you know, it's been that way for years, we're not going to change it. They were very willing to work with us. And you know, Proposal G, back quite a few years ago, said that we will allow the Department of Natural Resources to make rules based on scientific data. And however, this was in statute as to when that opening day was. And so now we've opened it up so where statute does not stop them from making those adjustments now. So I think we'll maybe see more of that in the future.
One measure that didn't see its way through completely in the last term was yours regarding choice for vocational ed. You're reintroducing that in this term. Language the same, but tenets of it the same, or is it, as we look at it again in this session, or any factors pending that would you know, change that in any way this time around?
That's an exciting one. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I did introduce it the same as it was before. However, we are working together. Myself, Ed McBroom, and Eric Nesbitt have all introduced bills regarding allowing more vocational education and not having some of the restrictions that have been in the Michigan Merit Curriculum. And the governor actually mentioned all three of us in his State of the State address, and that he wants to work with us on this. And so that really helps us. And what we're doing right now is the three of us are working together with people from education and industry to put together a program that we believe everyone can get behind, and will help our kids to be able to take part in skilled trades learning, so that they can fill some of these jobs that are out there and available in, you know, at high paying levels, and not have to jump through some of the hoops that they've had to in the past. So very excited about this. We're, as I say, we're in a work group situation. We're hoping that we will have new bills to drop in within the next few weeks.
In case you're just joining us, the program is Capitol Report. I'm David Nicholas, and we're talking with Representative Joel Johnson, a Republican from Clare, representing the 97th District. Staying on the subject of education, Representative Kevin Cotter, who was with us last week, said that he thinks the proposed increase in the K-12 funding from the governor's budget proposal will stand as the budget process is moving forward. Do you agree with that? And what do you see as the impact on some of the smaller districts? His, like yours, have some of the schools in the smaller areas that are at the bottom of that funding tier, as it were. What do you see as the prospects for the K-12 schools?
Well, I too think that we'll continue to increase our funding for education. One of the things that I've brought up is the fact, and I did resubmit my bill, that requires foundation grant equity for all schools, including our schools. And my schools are all at the lowest funding level for the state as well. And so what I'm asking is that we bring all of those schools to a level funding per per student for state funding within a 3-year period. Now, we were happy to receive an extra $120 per student for those lowest funded schools last year. There is a little bit extra in there in the governor's recommendation for this year. I'd like to see more of that money go to those lowest funded schools, and so we'll continue to work on that.
Your district also includes Mid-Michigan Community College, and there is a recently announced move now to establish some more 4-year degree offerings at community colleges. We're sitting on the CMU campus. We can set that aside, but I'm wondering in the long term if the 2-year and the 4-year schools, in your view, can be cooperative, or is this more of a competitive nature in the relationship? What should that relationship be moving forward?
I really believe it can and should be cooperative, and I think particularly with some of the changes that have taken place in the medical community, RN and LPN licensure doesn't mean as much as a baccalaureate degree, and the baccalaureates are really starting to be a requirement of our medical institutions. So I think it's really important that we do work together. Mid-Michigan Community College has done a terrific job of training nurses, and I think that we really should allow them an opportunity to look at that baccalaureate program so that they can continue to train nurses that will be accepted into the field.
I'm glad you mentioned, or it dovetails well to the next thing I had was noting in regards to health care. There are 2 bills currently in the House with an aim, the writers say, to increase rural health care options. Tell us about those and what impact they could have on more rural district like District 97 in terms of access in those rural areas to health care.
Well, you know, we need to continue to have opportunities. We have some terrific facilities that work with people on a sliding scale for economic situations for those families, and we need more of those, I think, and more opportunities for nonprofit organizations to provide health care. And so, you know, we'll continue to support those. We recently had a new one open up in Beaverton. We're very happy about that. And so just having more opportunities closer to home for people to take part in taking care of their health, I think is really important.
Now you mentioned, too, as we were sitting down, a proposed measure that would deal with professional pharmacies being able to redistribute medications for greater access through those who are being serviced with Medicaid and Medicare. Tell us a little bit about this. It's linked to some legislation from a lawmaker and how all of this will work moving ahead.
Yeah, we were very happy to have the governor sign this bill here just recently. And the situation was that in the past, if someone was in a medical care facility and was discharged or ended up being allergic to a drug or whatever the situation might be, that if there were prescription drugs left over, that those drugs had to be destroyed. So this bill would allow those drugs that have been strictly in the care of the professional pharmacist on site, that they could redistribute those drugs to someone else with a prescription who's either uninsured or on Medicaid or Medicare. And so that gives that opportunity for those drugs not to be wasted, but to be used for someone who really needs those. Additionally to that is it was tie-barred to a bill by Representative Jim Ananick from Genesee County that would provide for those pharmacists, those volunteer pharmacies, to be a collection point for drugs that cannot be reused so that they can be destroyed properly. And this is a big issue to protect our environment, to protect those drugs from being flushed into our water. And also it helps prevent overdoses by not having those drugs out there in the medicine cabinets, and also helps prevent crime. And because there have been situations where people have sought out homes of older folks or people who have recently passed away just to get those drugs. And so this is a big thing. We're really happy. Tom Pern still really helped bring about this legislation. He's been working at it for years, and we were able to get it put together and finished. So very happy to be able to do that.
Similar to, well, at least in that general area, when we talk about access to health care and public health issues, there were some recent reports that talked about the amount of use, those that have been under the care under Michigan's Medical Marijuana Act, and areas within your district were at the higher end of that list, and the inference as to whether or not this was dealing with those specifically in need of that care versus some of the things that we have seen, obviously linked to the illegal activity that's gone on and some of the distribution, and the case that came out of Isabella County that dealt with the patient-to-patient exchanges. What is going on right now in terms of the fair use under the way that law is written and how it's being handled in your district at this time? Well,
currently, of course, they are really trying to make sure of a patient-doctor relationship. There is care to make sure that caregivers represent, I think, 3 people that they can get product to. There is really no legislation that refers to, or in effect right now, that refers to distribution points. And now, Representative Mike
Was that a loophole that was missed in the way it was originally written?
Well,
the biggest criticism I've had anytime I've asked anybody about this, including, well, several lawmakers, law enforcement, I mean, all sorts of things, that it sounded good in theory, it passed overwhelmingly in all 83 counties, but that this was just full of holes for potential abuse, and we are still ongoing seeing the effects, court challenges and the like of all sorts of problems that have come because, as written, it's just not essentially in the end doing all that it was meant to do, and all these other abuses are taking place.
Yeah, it's been a tough situation. It's been tough for local governments because, you know, to look at that legislation and say, there's still a lot of questions. What can we do here? What can we not? And Representative Mike Colton is a very open-minded individual. He's involved in the medical community. He's a chiropractor, and he's working on legislation to provide for distribution points on this. And I haven't studied it out completely at this point, but I've heard some of the information on it. There are some good arguments for what he's working on, so I'll be very open-minded on that.
For those that have followed the past term and now the reintroduction of the bills to make changes to Blue Cross Blue Shield, where does that currently stand in terms of the action in Lansing, and what essentially will we see at the ground level in the long-standing insurance care provider, and how it may, in some ways, maybe there are no changes that will be detected by those, you know, that are consumers, or maybe there will be. What's the interpretation there?
It's the bill in place now has come from the Senate. The Senate did pass the bill that would allow for changing Blue Cross from a nonprofit charitable to a nonprofit mutual. And this would allow them to pay taxes or require them to pay some taxes, which they haven't had in the past, and change some other things about the way that they're set up. One of the biggest issues that I've had is that sometimes I feel that in government we don't drive a very hard bargain, and I felt that perhaps a little tougher bargain could have been put forward with them. They have an agreement that I believe is complete in 2016 for subsidizing Medigap coverage, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of an extension. There is provision in this bill that would allow for some subsidization of Medigap. But it's going to be means tested, so people who really need it will receive the help and others will not. And that's an issue that I've had with this. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I just felt like we could have done a little better job of getting a little more of a bargain from Blue Cross on that for our seniors.
for that got so much of the headlines, and for always the beginning of a new term and the beginning of any new year when we look at the budget proposal and the work. We've got a couple of minutes left to run through what you would say might be some of the highlights of some of the other action then that's being done of bills, whether it be on the budget front or elsewhere, of the things that are currently seeing action working their way through. Any highlights that you would point to of the early work in this part of the session?
Well, a lot of the thing that gets brought up to me is road taxes, gas tax, and increased registration fees. And you know, most of the input that I get is I don't want more road tax on my gas. I don't want higher registration fees. And I understand that. People are taxed hard already. We have people who drive great distances to work, sometimes for mediocre to low-paying jobs. And so I don't feel good about adding to that burden at that point. What I really feel that we need to do first on that is to make sure that we're using every dollar of taxpayer money to its most efficient level. And I feel that there's a lot of areas that we need to go to work on just to make sure that we're being very efficient with our government. One of the areas that I'm concerned about is the central office of our Department of Corrections. I think we're employing too many people there. Now, can they find things to do? I'm sure they can. But I think that we can cut back there and still keep the people that we have in our prisons, because we need those guards. But we really need to look at that area as well as many others. One of the other areas that really concerns me is our Department of Education, and the fact that we send auditors out multiple times to each of our schools to talk to them about boxes that didn't get checked or this or that. And these schools are being required to fill out so many duplicative reports that sometimes are not even used. And they're being rated in ways that I don't think is a fair way to rate our schools. And what really ends up happening is we take educators out of the classroom, we take administrators out of their areas where they're working with our students, and we're locking them up for days on end, working with auditors, and rather than allowing them to do the job that they're there to do. And so that's another area that I really think we need to concentrate on as well.
We'll make a note to pick up that discussion perhaps on the radio. We've got to leave our discussion there. Lots going on, but as always, we do appreciate your time and taking that time to join us. Good to have you.
Thank you very much, Dave.
All right. And thank you, as always, for your time and attention as well. A reminder that we are rebroadcast in the overnight schedule. You can check the listings for this program as it comes up in our overnight lineup early Wednesday mornings. Program is also posted later to our website as well. The link there to the Capitol Report page through the CMU Public TV portion at WCMU.org. For all of us here, the crew that helps put the program on each and every week, I'm David Nicholas. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again.
You've been watching Capitol Report. Join us again as your elected officials speak to your concerns on current issues.